Hi, and welcome to another edition of FredAndAnnette.com, the real deal about real estate. My name is Annette Reynolds. For the past year, we've been recording these programs just about every other week, and for the most part, we've been focusing on the buy side of real estate. What do I do as a buyer? Today, we're going to take a look at the other side. How do I go about selling my home? With me today as my guest for an encore performance is Jim Zarkadas. Jim is the sales manager over at Century 21 Commonwealth in Watertown. Jim, it's good to see you here again.
Good to see you, and thank you for having me again, Annette.
One of the reasons I wanted to have you here today is that you've had a lot of experience, not just as a manager, but also as a real estate sales agent.
Yes.
And I wanted you to bring that experience to our listeners today. Let's say I need to sell my home, or I want to sell my home, and I call your office and I get a hold of an agent. How does this process all start?
Well, it all starts with finding the right agent. Once you've found that agent, it's just a question of setting up the time where the agent can come through your property and basically take some information from what that property has to offer, different features from that property, and then do their homework and do their research to come up with a value. The most important part about selling a property is making sure that it's priced right. There's two things that sell property: that's pricing and marketing. So the important thing is to find an agent that is very familiar with the marketplace. If they're familiar with the marketplace, they know where the property should be priced and how it will be attractive to other buyers that are out there, not also the buyers, but also other agents that then can tell their buyers about that property.
Well, how do they actually go about deciding on what the property is worth?
Well, it's interesting because there's different approaches that are out there. We tend to use an approach that appraisers use, which is basically to find similar sales, properties that have sold. Now, sometimes you will see that there are properties that are listed in a neighborhood. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's where the values fall. It's what has sold. It's what a buyer is willing to pay. That is what is used as the measuring stick. The same approach that an appraiser would use is what a good real estate agent should use, that same formula.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question now I ask almost every single one of my guests. How do you get paid?
How do we get paid? We get paid a percentage of what the sales price ends up being on the sale of the property. So depending on what that agreement is between the buyers, between the sellers and the agent/broker.
Is there a standard? I mean, I've had people tell me, ask me, what's the standard rate? Or
there is no standard. There's a range of what one is willing to pay for services. And again, it depends. There's some services that some brokerages offer that others don't. Will they still accomplish the same? Again, it depends on what the property is and what a marketing plan, what type of marketing plan does that brokerage have. There are different features, such as what we have to offer versus what other companies have to offer.
Okay, so my agent comes in, he says, I'm going to charge you so much to sell your house.
Correct.
Do I have to write him a check?
No, you don't. Those proceeds are actually deducted after the sale is complete. So after a transaction between a buyer and seller, at the closing, there is usually a HUD settlement sheet, which basically breaks down all the expenses. At that point is when a real estate agent is paid, once the sale happens between the buyer and seller.
Now, I know that most sales are co-brokered, meaning the listing agent isn't the person who actually doesn't bring the buyer to the transaction there. How does that other broker get paid?
They get paid based on a cooperating fee. Most brokerages have an agreement with MLS where they're willing to pay a co-broke X amount of percentage of their fee. So it depends. It's sometimes 50-50, or it depends on what they have worked out.
Now, I'm a little bit confused now. Actually, I'm not, but I'm acting like I'm a little bit confused here.
Fine.
Does that mean I pay you whatever percentage, and I have to write another check for the buyer's broker?
No. Basically, what you will do is you'll receive X amount of dollars at the closing from the seller, and then from there you take a portion and you pay the co-broke or the buying agent that brought the buyer forward.
Okay. If when I want to sell a home, I tell everybody about it.
Yes.
What if one of my friends comes up and wants to buy my home? And we've signed the agreement. I'm going to give you, let's just for argument's sake, I'm going to give you 6%. And my friend comes and says, I hear you're selling your house, I'd like to buy it. Do I still owe you the money?
You do, because it is a contract, and according to the state of Massachusetts, it's contract law. It's what's stated. If that person happened to be a exclusion from the beginning of the transaction, obviously that would be something that would be worked out between the two parties, the brokerage and the seller. But for the most part, it is a contract. Most brokerage have at that point already spent money marketing and doing what they're supposed to do on their end to get the property sold. So it's something you want to make sure, if that is the case, it's cleared up front between the buyers, between the seller and the broker.
So if I know of somebody who might be interested, I mention this to the broker
Correct.
Ahead of time,
Correct.
So that we don't have any kind of misunderstanding with that.
And most times that exclusion is exhausted within the first week. Majority of the time that buyer who shows interest finds out what the sales price is, and they usually don't move, the purchase price, the offering price, and usually do not move forward. Sometimes people think a private sale, they're going to get a better deal than dealing with going through a brokerage.
Yes, I almost went off on a tangent on that there, but I'm not going to. Okay, let us go back to the original transaction. You're my agent. I sit and sign the contract on a nice evening. What do you do then?
From that point forward, there's the behind the scenes of getting the property ready for market, and there's different parts to how a property is marketed. And again, it depends on what type of marketing plan you have and whoever the agent is. With our company, the most important thing is first make sure that the sellers receive a copy of that contract, just know exactly what they've signed. From there, then, like I said, the marketing starts. Different things of bringing stagers in, getting it ready for online photos, different types of video, different things where you start to promote the property and you're able to show that market that property to different levels, such as, like I mentioned, from the internet all the way down to the social media.
That sounds like quite a bit of work.
It is.
What about open houses?
Open houses is then, as the week, as you start moving towards the weekend, it's traditional form of marketing, but still we do it. Again, a well-priced property will sell 60% of the time at the first open house. So pricing, again, like I mentioned earlier, marketing and price are the two things that sell homes. That's an important factor. And if it's priced right, you should get a good amount of people that are coming through, a good amount of buyers that will come through the property, and create a great situation for the seller where you potentially could have maybe 2 or 3 buyers that start bidding against each other for that property.
How sweet that sounds.
That would be beautiful, yes.
Okay, now what can I do to make my home more attractive to buyers?
One thing that we recommend is staging. Staging is very important. And basically what that is bring a professional in that would start to place things within the home that would be more appealing to the buyers. There's taking away a lot of the personal items that sometimes could be a distraction to potential buyers out there. So one of the key features, like I mentioned, in staging is to give a feeling of wow. Is to get that wow effect. A buyer will make their decision usually within the first 10 seconds of walking through a property.
Now, what if I have certain times of the day or the week that I don't want the property shown? How is that negotiated?
It's based on scheduling. So depending on it, with most of my clients, my question is, how much time do you need to get ready? So let's say someone's coming in from California, they just got off the plane, they know they've got to start their search, they only have a couple of hours. Do you have enough time? Is an hour enough time? Is 2 hours enough time? Do you need 6 hours, 12 hours? Sometimes we have tenants in multifamily home situation where they need 24 hours. So again, it depends on the client.